We're going to call this October 15, 2019 regular meeting of the Board of Education of Springfield Public Schools to order. And
take a breath.
And we will call on Mr. Hall.
Great. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we are joined by a fourth grade student from Hickory Hills Elementary School, Jordan Chiera. Jordan, can you come up? Awesome. You want to stand right here while I talk about you? We could describe what makes Jordan such a special student, but we think that a television news story that aired on KY3 at the beginning of the school year will do an even better job. So let's play that.
Joe Hickman shares how a fourth grader's simple act of kindness made some newcomers to the area happy they chose Springfield to call home.
The Jones family of four, soon to be six with twins on the way, had just moved to East Central Springfield from Knoxville, Tennessee this summer. Oldest son, Alanson, was excited about starting kindergarten at Hickory Hills and riding a bus for the very first time. But when the opening day of school arrived,
a little bit of anxiety, I think, set in, and every morning there were tears, and I would have to kind of physically help him onto the steps of the bus and get him settled.
But one day, as the lonely kindergartner boarded the bus, a fourth grader noticed Alanson crying and reached out. And with that simple gesture, Jordan Chiera had made the world right again.
So when I was kind of sad, he sat by me and we became bus buddies.
Someone to show compassion and kindness to a little boy that was struggling, it warms my heart and it gives me hope for the world.
Since then, these bus buddies have expanded their friendship to school, where Alanson claims to be the fastest of the two.
Like this.
Are you really that fast?
Like the Flash.
While Jordan is the entertainer.
Look at that. He likes doing funny things and I laugh a lot.
Then again, it's easy to make a kindergartner laugh.
Awesome.
Like making another simple gesture.
Let me see this.
Doo-doo-doo.
All right, I got you.
We call it the credit card swipe.
You can tell from meeting Jordan that he's an exemplary young man whose parents have taught him well. And officials here at Hickory Hills are proud of him because he represents the core character values that they teach.
One of the things we really strive to do here at Hickory Hills is to build our culture of being respectful, responsible, ready, and he's taken that message, and to do it from day one to a young student that he didn't even know really tells me he's taken those qualities to heart.
So maybe a fourth grader can teach us all a life lesson on how caring, compassion, and consideration are important to pass on to everyone.
I've talked with him about now it's your turn. If you ever see that in someone, now that you're so brave, you can help them.
It's rough, but you gotta try your hardest, you gotta try your best, and don't give up.
Reporting from Springfield, I'm Joe Hickman.
You okay with your head?
Yeah. So that is what it's all about, Jordan. Thank you for reminding us. And if you'd like to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance, we'll let you start whenever you're ready. We also, I would like to mention, we have Jordan's parents. We have a group from Hickory Hills, lots of people here to support him, so we want to thank them for being here tonight. So Jordan, whenever you're ready, lead us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's to you, and we're going to have our picture made, okay? So precious. So we'll move forward now with our honoring excellence for the evening. We have a great group here behind us representing the Junior Chef Competition. The fourth annual competition took place October 5th. And tonight we would like to recognize the teams that won Judge's Choice in both the elementary and the middle school categories. This competition included 75 students from 20 teams representing elementary and middle. Teams of students created their recipes, went to the farmer's market to purchase locally grown ingredients, and prepared a brunch dish that was then presented to judges, including school board member Mr. Jerry Lee. So the board had the opportunity to taste the winning recipe earlier this evening, and now you have an opportunity to meet the chefs who created it. The winners in the elementary category for Judge's Choice and Best Taste and Recipe are the Sugar Babies from Disney Elementary School. Team members include, and come forward please when I call your name, we have Leah Lauren, Cameron O'Grady, and Gabby Cloak. Winners in the middle school category for Judge's Choice and Best Use of Local Food are the Cooking Kitties from Cherokee Middle School. Team members include Lydia and Clara Poppin and Julia Ennis. So come forward. And before we get a photo with them, we want to note that a large event like this does not happen without collaboration. It takes a lot of partners coming together. We receive support from many, including the Springfield Grocer, Aramark, Highland Dairy, Cox College, Vital Farms, Jordan Valley Health, and Fellers Fixtures. So let's give a hand to those community partners. Congratulations. Thank you all very much. So we typically honor current students, but tonight we want to highlight several former SPS students. On Thursday, we will induct 3 SPS alumni into the Springfield Public Schools Hall of Fame. This is the 10th year for this event, and with the class of 2019, we will induct our 30th outstanding graduate. We'd like to share with you information about our inductees this year. Dr. David Andrick graduated from Parkview High School in 1970 at the age of 16. He went on to pursue his passion for physics, studying at Missouri State University and Rutgers University, where he earned a PhD. He served 14 years as Senior Associate Dean of the College of Mathematical and Physical Sciences at The Ohio State University, where he is now an emeritus professor. He has conducted research in the areas of hydrodynamics, astrophysics, and high-power laser interaction with matter. For 15 years, he served on Missouri State University's Physics Advisory Board. He is passionate about mentoring students interested in physics and has even helped fund scholarships to ensure they are able to further their education. Timothy A. Garrison is a member of Hillcrest High School's class of 1994. He is the top-ranking federal law enforcement official in the Western District of Missouri. As the United States Attorney for that jurisdiction, he leads the battle against federal crimes related to terrorism, public corruption, child exploitation, firearms, and narcotics. He served 4 years of active duty in the U.S. Marine Corps and is currently a lieutenant colonel. Through his service, Mr. Garrison has earned numerous military decorations, including the Combat Action Ribbon, the Meritorious Service Medal, 2 Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medals, and the Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal. Finally, Mr. Larry Hartley is a member of Hillcrest High School's class of 1963. For nearly 30 years, Mr. Hartley was employed by NASA at the Johnson Space Center, where his work supported Apollo and Space Shuttle missions. As a NASA trajectory engineer, he provided mission support during the first Apollo moon landing and other Apollo missions. Trajectory techniques developed by Mr. Hartley helped extend the stay time on the moon for astronauts on all flights following Apollo 11. After leaving NASA, he had a distinguished career in the private sector, which included helping determine the cause of the Space Shuttle Challenger explosion and developing fixes that enabled Space Shuttle missions to continue. He helped pioneer computer security techniques to protect NASA resources as the internet was emerging in the 1980s, and as a result, was honored by NASA with the coveted Silver Snoopy Award. Mr. Hartley currently serves as an adjunct professor of management at Lone Star College, Kingwood, near Houston. So let's give our inductees a round of applause, and we look forward to seeing many in the community. And again, we will host a reception for the inductees and their families on Wednesday evening with the luncheon on Thursday. We will now move forward with our 25 service 25-year service anniversaries. Tonight, we have a special recognition for those staff members who will celebrate their 25-year anniversary during our 2019-2020 school year. This year, we have 21 employees celebrating 25 years with Springfield Public Schools. 6 of these special employees are here with us tonight. At the November 19th meeting, we will recognize the other 25-year honorees, and we also will have a number of employees at the November 19th meeting celebrating 30 and 35-year anniversaries with Springfield Public Schools. So as we call your name, we invite these employees to please come forward, and our board president, Mr. Rosenberry, will present you with a commemorative lanyard to mark this important service anniversary. And we ask everyone to hold your applause until we announce all the honorees, and we'll get a group photo as well. Stephanie Carter is a second grade teacher at Truman Elementary School. Mary Bear is a nutrition services employee at Carver Middle School. Carol Lee Kennedy is a kindergarten teacher at Williams Elementary School. Marty Marsh is the assistant director of athletics. Virginia Omens is a custodian at Bowerman Elementary School. And Joanne Phillips is a music teacher at Hickory Hills Middle School. And just to make sure we didn't miss anyone with RSVPs, is anyone else here tonight with the 25-year anniversary? Thank you all so much for your service. So now we are excited to present our Power of One Hero recognition for this month. Each month we highlight the contributions of an individual who has used their superpower within Springfield Public Schools to make the difference in the lives of others. So without further delay, here is our October Power of One Hero.
My name is Bob Carlew. I am a paraprofessional here at Westport Elementary.
Mr. Bob started here last year as a substitute in the special education classroom because we needed a para. He came in thinking it was a 3-day job and ended up staying the whole year because he's amazing.
I was in business working for a company for 25 years. I had reached a point in my career that I had lost the reason. I went to my wife. I said, honey, I can't do this anymore. I have an amazing wife. She said, find your reason. So I resigned from the company. I took a couple of months to get my head together, and a friend of mine, Carla Moore, who's over at Hickory Hills now, she said, why don't you substitute for a while till you can kind of figure things out? I did, and I got a call one day, September of last year, to come to Westport Elementary. I stayed for 4 days, and that was the assignment, and I knew I could never leave. So I stayed for the year. There was a need, and I fell in love with this place. And now I work for Springfield Public Schools, and I'm here at Westport full-time.
Paraprofessionals support the emotional well-being of our kids and our staff every single day, and they help kids be academically successful. Every day, Mr. Bob greets every single person in our building with high fives, good morning, have a great day, it's my favorite day, you're amazing. And the positivity that he brings to our building to start our kids' day every single day, because who knows what they came from, is absolutely amazing.
A lot of our students here, especially when you look at positive role models in their life, they're few and far between. And so they look at their teachers and their staff.
When I started working with students, I realized that there was nobody I could better serve than the kids that were asking nothing of me other than to give to them. It is an amazing experience. Mrs. Dennison, our principal, probably made it the clearest. Our kids need to feel safe, and they need to feel like they belong. This is their place. We're here to serve their needs. So if I can make that connection with them, and if I can make them feel welcome, I feel like I'm helping them get their day started the right way. And I have made it my mission every morning to greet every student that comes in this building. I want them to feel like this is their home.
Congratulations, Mr. Bob. We love you here at Westport. He always says that teachers are the heroes here, and he is my hero for everything he's done for these students.
If I had to say I had a superpower, I think over time it's gratitude. I am thankful for where I am in my life. I am thankful that I have a wife that understands that I need to be here right now. I'm thankful to the administration here and the teachers here that say, do your thing, help our kids, and they give me 100% support. I am so grateful that I can do something and make a difference, but more importantly, work somewhere that they're making a bigger difference to me than I could ever make to them. I'm a lucky guy.
Check out this great crew from Westport around the room.
Love that support.
That says a lot about the Westport family. So thank you all for being here very much.
That's awesome.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, all you standing up against the wall in the orange, it's a long day, you've been working hard, but it shows how much you care about each other. That it's 6 o'clock and you guys are here to support your coworkers. So good job. Good job.
We are so pleased that we have more heroes here to recognize this evening, our community partners who make the work of Springfield Public Schools possible. Tonight, we are so pleased to recognize Ozarks Food Harvest for the collaborative spirit that they have in supporting our schools with several major initiatives, and I want to touch on just a few of those, to help us address food insecurity for our students and our community. Food Fight is a partnership between Ozarks Food Harvest and Springfield Public Schools that takes place every January. The Food Fund Drive competition among schools raises awareness of hunger across the district and stocks community and school pantry shelves following the holiday season. Since 2011, Food Fight has helped provide 204,720 meals in the Ozarks. The Weekend Backpack program provides food insecure children with a bag of child-friendly food items to take home every Friday during the school year. Each bag contains 2 breakfasts, 2 lunches, 2 dinners, and 2 snacks along with beverages. Each summer, Ozarks Food Harvest presents to first grade classrooms during SPS Explore. Students learn about hunger in the Ozarks and how they can make a difference in their community. At this time, we'd like to introduce you to our Ozarks Food Harvest representatives. Our first individual couldn't be with us, but I want to read her name. Jennifer Sickinger is a community engagement manager who coordinates the Food Fight. Sarah Relke is a communication coordinator and organizes Go Orange Day. She coordinates with Explore and works with SPS for various social media promotions throughout the year. Sarah Bird is a community engagement coordinator, and she organizes food and fun drives with SPS and works with Jennifer to help organize the Food Fight. And finally, Rebecca Moore is a backpack program coordinator, and she collaborates with our schools to facilitate the weekend backpack program. Thank you all so much for what you do for our students and for our community. Thank you.
Stephen,
Anything you want to say?
there was a little bit of noise going on back there whenever you were giving us some of the statistics. How many meals again did you say? I think you gave us a total.
I did. So since 2011, Food Fight has helped provide 204,720 meals in the Ozarks.
Wow.
Amazing work. Is there anything you would like to say to our board?
Words.
We just appreciate this partnership, and we look forward to ongoing support from us and from you, and we look forward to this year's food fight as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
And that concludes our Honoring Excellence. Thank you very much.
Wow.
Thank you, Stephen. Well, I would say let's adjourn. But
Need some Kleenexes.
we have a lot of
Motion's been
important
made and
business
seconded.
to cover, and I know there are concerns. We have at least one speaker tonight, so we have a lot to cover tonight. So the first action item is to approve the agenda as presented. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Alina. Is there a second?
Second.
Charles? Are we ready to vote on that?
Yes.
Please vote.
I'm having an existential crisis again. I don't exist.
Thrown up through us out.
I.
All right, the ayes have it. And the next item is public comments to address agenda items, and I have no speakers signed up. All right. We do have 3 items on the consent agenda. Items 3.01 through 5.01. That includes the minutes, the contracts, agreements, change orders, and bids, and then the personnel piece. So I would take a motion that the board approves consent agenda items 3.01 through 5.01.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Bruce. We ready to vote? Please vote.
So much for my crisis.
The ayes have it. And the next item is the treasurer's report. Welcome to the podium, Carol Embry.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This evening, you will note in the items of interest report, we've highlighted for you that the budget amendment and transfer information that's included within this report and for which we're seeking your approval is primarily limited to the revenue that we received for the sale of property at Locust and Division. That was the old maintenance center. So that closing occurred, and we're catching up the revenue budget to include that. And then there are some other slight adjustments on the expenditure side that are offset by revenue in the amount of around $20,000. So very, very minimal. We are maintaining this very stable fund balance percentage for our operating funds of 17.95%. So that did not change from last month's report to you. And we've included our normal reporting structure for your review. Our auditors are here with us now, so as we continue to journey forward in that, we'll be bringing you additional information and offer this time for any questions you may have.
Any questions for Carol? If there aren't any, there is action that we need to take on that, and that is that the board approves treasurer's report as presented. Our motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Charles. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Denise. We ready to vote on the treasurer's report? Please vote. Ayes have it. So on item 7, there are no information reports, so we move on to item 8.01, which is the board policy adoptions and revisions.
those were first read last meeting. We didn't have any follow-up questions, so we'll ask for you to consider approval, and we'll have a new set next month as we work through this most recent MSBA update.
Any discussion regarding these policies? If not, the recommended action for the board tonight is that the board adopt all policies as presented. Your motion to that effect?
So moved.
Thank you, Alina. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is that from Bruce?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Any discussion? Ready to vote? Please vote. Ayes have it. We move on to new business, and there are no new business items. So we go to unfinished business. That's agenda item 10. And the first one is the approval of transportation routes. Those were presented to us last time. As far as I know, these are unchanged. Is there any discussion before we consider the motion? The motion, I'm going to ask for a motion that the Board of Education approve the bus routes as developed by the Transportation Department.
So moved.
Thank you, Alina. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Bruce. We ready to vote on the routes? Please vote. Ayes have it. We move on to 10.02, which is the transportation bus purchase that was presented at the last meeting. The recommended action tonight would be that the board authorizes the superintendent or his designee to approve the bid with Midwest Transit Equipment as presented. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Lena. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Charles. We ready to vote? Let's vote. The ayes have it. Next item is under unfinished business is the 2020 legislative platform.
No, this is about a 2-month process for us where I put the last year's platform in front of you last meeting, asked you to start to give me feedback. Some of you gave me a couple notes, sent me an email regarding some potential updates to that. I brought it back in the old-fashioned hard copy with highlights and mark-throughs as we journey our way through. We don't first read this until the November meeting, and then we would look for formal adoption at the regular business meeting in November. So if you'll just walk through real quickly, just so you see a few of the things. Again, anything marked through was in there last year. Anything highlighted would be a new word. Kind of looks like tried to use the same format that MSBA uses as they modify some of our policy recommendations. Really, the priority or the belief statements, no changes. I think those are core, and they very much represent what you believe to be true. State legislative priorities, we obviously always start with the resource conversation as the biggest things that impact our students is the state's foundation formula and the transportation formula. We know that the foundation formula is being met at this point, but the transportation formula is not. Most of those are just kind of word choice, some cleanup and word choice to make sure that we're talking clearly about the transportation formula that's established in statutory language that we would like them to try to get to full funding. We're about $200 million short on that. That takes you down to the accountability components, and this is just a little more clarity, I think, regarding accountability. There's a new statement. We support equitable accountability systems for all pre-kindergarten through 12th grade schools within Missouri which receive state revenue. We've always talked a little bit about the issues with charter accountability and how it's different, but we did that through the school reform section. We know that school choice advocates can come at that through a number of different angles, so I didn't want it to just say charter. Wanted anything that served a state resource to have clarity that we want equitable accountability systems for the benefit of students and for the benefits of our districts that are serving those students. So added that statement. In the funding section, the department has put together a plan where they're seeking a 3-year deployment of catch-up money for the transportation fund, that $200 million shortfall. They've typically just done 10 or 12 million a year request. That shortfall, they've basically divided by 3 and said we're going to go after 60 million a year, 65 million a year for the next 3 years. So I added specificity that we support the deployment of a 3-year plan to fully fund transportation so that we can get that caught back up. We know that creates about a $3 to $4 million shortfall for us that we use out of operating funds in order to fund transportation that could be reallocated to instructional purposes if the state was fully funding that component. So more clarity on that statement. If you flip to the back, still in that area of funding, this is one that was recommended, is being more clear regarding physical and mental health needs of our students and resources necessary in order to support our kids. It's not specific to a program. I know there may be some dialogue around specific programming, directing this to specific programming, but I went with a kind of an all-encompassing to start with. And it says we support increases in state and or federal funding for programs which help meet the physical and mental health needs of our under-resourced students. We didn't have anything really on mental or physical health needs of under-resourced students, and we know that some decisions at the state level have limited our ability to access those funds. So this gives us language that covers those dialogues, whether that be Medicaid funding or other structures that may be out there to help with physical or mental health needs. And then the last addition, and I know this was an issue that came up last year that we didn't have a statement in our board platform around current board election structures, and it just says we support maintaining the current board election date in April and 3-year terms defined in statute. There was a piece of legislation wanting to move those to November and turn them to 4-year terms. I think clear evidence to make that more of a political conversation and very partisan, and that's happened in other states. I know MSBA has, I think, fought against that. Since last year was the first time we'd, I think, seen that come up in our state, we didn't have a platform position, so I added a statement regarding that. All of those are just for initial reaction and discussion, and then we'll work to first read a formal document at the next meeting. So put this in front of you, any feedback for the group to discuss.
Yeah, here's what we'll do is if you have any visceral reactions tonight, we want to hear them, but next meeting would be the first read, basically, at which time we could modify it, or you could bring your modifications to it. And then a month from now, we'll consider this for a vote. Any visceral reactions?
It doesn't quite rise to the level of visceral, but I think I would probably make a recommendation we be more explicit on increases in state and or federal funding. We're leaving a lot of money on the table. I'm not opposed to pushing for Medicaid expansion as part of that platform. And there's a fair amount of data which we got as our homework for the Equity and Diversity Advisory Council that suggests leveraging Medicaid expansion funds in a number of states has reduced chronic absenteeism, hence increased performance. So not quite visceral, but important, I think.
Just following up on that too, while I agree with this 100%, I think the funding for just physical and mental health needs of all the students too is as important as the under-resourced, which I think it needs to be a separate line item, but I wouldn't hesitate to, because he's right that there's a lot of money out there that could be, because it's not always under-resources that have some mental and physical needs. I just don't want to leave that off.
Right.
But I do think this needs to be an individual specific, looking for under-resourced students, but somewhere I think we need to complement that with.
You got the chair.
In general, we need to
Poke
be
the bear.
doing more for all of our students with respect to physical and mental health needs. So I don't know how you word that, or how you put it in there, but that would just be my thought there, is not make that a broader statement.
What
But
kind of language?
yeah, but I would not change that one.
Right. Certainly trying to target it towards where we see our data.
Absolutely.
Our
Absolutely.
chronic absenteeism is
Absolutely.
in that category, so we wanted to make sure that it aligns with our.
I mean, if I had to prioritize them, absolutely, that's where we need to go, but I don't want to lose sight of the fact that we just need basic funding for some
needed
mental
for
health
all.
and physical needs of all of our kids.
Great feedback.
All right, you'll see something that looks like this next time. One of the things, do you have some? One of the things that I would caution us to think about is the, well, I'm just going to say it crudely, the political realities in which we enter these discussions, particularly at the state level, and whether, and I agree with you, Charles, about the Medicare supports especially. How we lead with that, or whether we lead with that, given the political situation in Jeff City, something we need to think about. But I hear you entirely, and I'm in agreement that is a strategy that we're not employing, that we're leaving, as you say, a lot of money on the table. All right, that's...
Thanks so much for your feedback. If you have any additional, I know you're seeing this for the first time with the modification, so you've got plenty of time to give me feedback between now and the next meeting. I will try to have a cleaned up version at that time. Obviously, modifications can still be had, but if you have anything, again, that strikes you between now and then, let me know.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Next item, 10.04 is the Early Childhood Center Naming Committee. And this is for action tonight. Carol's going to give us context.
So last board meeting on October 1st, I provided you with the preliminary information and especially identifying the community members. I indicated I needed to provide you additionally the teacher names and the student names, and those are officially listed for you within board docs at this time. So as a reminder, we comply with board policy FF, naming of facilities, and a board-appointed committee shall be formed. We will post those meetings and hold those publicly for anyone who may be interested in attending. Community members will be Mike White as chair, Charlotte Harden, Mike Homan, and Dana Carroll. Missy Riley as Director of Early Childhood and Parents as Teachers will participate. The teachers identified include Sarah Fox, a Bowerman Wonder Years teacher, and Amanda Snyder, a Fremont Wonder Years teacher. And the students identified from the feeder pattern include Parkview student Darquez Morrison, he's the student council president at Parkview, and then Kickapoo student council president Michael Owsley. This is the recommended slate for the committee, and following this meeting, assuming your approval of the committee members, we will move forward with scheduling meetings and provide that information to you at a subsequent board meeting.
Thank you, Carol. Any questions for Carol?
Just one quick question. The teachers that were selected, these are new names coming to us. And we had discussed, had a side conversation about making sure the SNEA had representation.
We do have NEA represented.
Okay.
We reached out to their leader and ensured that we had someone on the team that would be providing that representation.
Okay, so one of those teachers is part of that.
And I don't know which one, but I do know that one of them is an NEA member.
Thank you.
Anything else? Well, the recommended action is that the board appoint a committee as presented for the purpose of recommending appropriate names for the new Early Childhood Center located on the Carver Middle School site. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Denise. We ready to vote? Let's vote. Ayes have it, and motion carries. The work of that committee of the board is advisory, and the board will then have the final decision when they come back with the committee comes back with their report.
I look forward to hearing it.
I think we all do. This is exciting
It
stuff.
is exciting stuff.
That's rare that a board gets to do this. All right, so we move on to item 11 in our agenda, which is the 2019 bond project updates and actions. And the first item, 11.01, is change orders. Welcome, Travis.
Thank you. I have a few change orders that for your approval this evening, a few of them from package number 2, trying to get those projects wrapped up. We do have one change to the contract with Terracon at the Jarrett site for the geotechnical services, and then a couple items at Sunshine regarding some of the phasing that's going on with that project. So the totals for each of these are relatively small, and we still have large contingencies available to pull from. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions for Dr. Shaw? None? Well, the action that's been recommended to us would be that the board approve the change orders as presented.
So moved.
Elena, is there a second?
Second.
Charles, thank you. We ready to vote on these? Please vote. Motion carries. Motion passes. The next item is a demolition bid.
This is for the Berry property, as well as 3 different properties that we purchased around that have houses, garages on them. And so we did receive 2 bids today. We had that bid opening this afternoon, and Bales was the lowest responsible bid at $202,800. That would start immediately to get those properties cleared and ready for the site for Boyd for its new location.
So that includes the houses on the properties that we've acquired.
That's correct.
And it includes the old
Berry
school building.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions?
Were the two bids similar?
I was not there, and I didn't get the second one. We did have a third one that showed up about 10 minutes late. So I do know the second one that came in was Gherkin, who received the other bid at Delaware. So I didn't get that information prior to the meeting.
As I recall, this bid for all these buildings is less than the bid that we received on Delaware.
It's about half.
Yeah. Okay. Smaller building.
Right, much smaller building.
Yeah. But there's
a little bit easier.
More components. All right. Nothing else? The recommended action of the board is that the board approve the demolition contract as presented. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Lena. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Denise. We ready to vote on this? Please vote. Ayes have it. All right, now we move on to public comments to address non-agenda items. I have one person signed up. Is that correct, Kathy? Before I invite the speaker to come forward, I will just read this information. The Board of Education allows comments on topics not related to the printed agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes for each speaker and will be timed by the board secretary. It's inappropriate to address the board about individual students or individual staff members by name in open meeting. If you have concerns about individuals, these concerns should be addressed through the appropriate administrative supervisors, either in the schools or in the district office. The board uses this time in our meeting to listen to comments and/or concerns from the public, but we will not comment nor engage with speakers during this meeting. If you have materials that you want to share, please provide them to the board secretary prior to speaking, and she will distribute them to the board members. Our speaker tonight is Ms. Daisy Tolliver. Welcome, Ms. Tolliver. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Daisy Tolliver. I'm raising 2 great-grandchildren who are students at Watkins Elementary School. I'm here today because of a situation on Friday, October the 4th. My granddaughter was cut with a knife on her wrist by a boy who brought a knife to school and also stabbed another child in the back. That day I was going to the school anyway to pay for school jackets I had ordered, but my cell phone rang while I was at work and I wasn't able to. I was really too busy at the time to answer it. When I looked at the number, it was the school, so I tried to call back, but no one answered. When I arrived at the school, the principal was praising my granddaughter for bringing a knife to her. I didn't think anything about it. We left the school, and when we got in the car, I saw she had a bandage on her arm. And I asked her what happened. She then told me about this boy who cut her and stabbed another child. The principal never said anything to me about this situation. A meeting was scheduled that following Monday, October the 7th. All the principal could say was she was sorry and should have done it differently. When I asked what was going to be done about the boy, she said she couldn't discuss anything about other students because of the FERPA law. There needs to be a better policy to inform parents about incidents. I have a right to know about my child's safety. There's need to be clear policies on how to handle these situations on an elementary level. Currently, the principal said 10 days suspension, but based on my documentation, it states when a student brings a weapon to school and use it, it's 1 year or 180 days suspension. I feel this whole situation is being downplayed and tried to make it seem insignificant. This wasn't handled well. I had asked for counseling for my granddaughter, and she was sent to school counselor without even telling me first. I asked my granddaughter what was said. She was asked one question: how does she feel when the boy returns to school? She said nervous. Then counselor told her, if anything happens, come tell me. That was the end of her counseling. There is total disparity about this situation. I feel if it had been a black boy that cut and stabbed a white girl, he would have been arrested, sent to detention, and it would have been all over the news. This is some of the reasons our black children have higher rates of dropout, because they are made to feel they don't matter. There is a lack of engagement from the teachers, and they don't feel safe. This boy has bullied my granddaughter since first grade. She said every time she told the teacher, the reply was, I will take care of it, and nothing is done. She said the classmates pretend to like this little boy so they won't get beat up. When I told the principal this, all she said was, well, you know, some kids don't listen. This matter of fact attitude is shameful, and this is what I am dealing with at that school. My final observation is some cultural competency training on how to work best with kids from different racial, ethnic, income backgrounds should be implemented. Kudos to Mr. Bob Carlo. We need more like him. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. The next item is a strategic discussion where we can participate in a dialogue focused on selected pertinent topics, and this one is a strategic plan report, focus area 1, goal 2 update. It's a continuation of sorts from our last meeting, and we welcome Dr. Range.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Get this all set up and we'll get going. All right. So yes, we are, as Mr. Rosenberry said, we are here to give you part 2. So when I say we, I'm going to start the presentation off. I've got the beginning slides, kind of the introductory slides. Jay Anderson will come up and talk about some of the elementary academics, and then Shane Dublin, Dr. Dublin, will come up and cover the middle and high school academics. This report this evening will have and I'll dive into this a little bit more here in a minute, but our kind of internal student achievement metrics. We won't give you this evening next steps and strategic action that we're taking, because we're going to save that to the November 5th board meeting when we pair this data with the APR data that we'll share with you that evening. So I'll start, Jay will be next, and then Shane will wrap up with his sections. So yes, we are still in focus area 1, which is student success and learning support, and we are in goal 2, which obviously the premise of goal 2 is student achievement. And that's what we're here to talk about this evening, to provide you some internal metrics that we track on our scorecard that show where strengths lie and where opportunities for improvement lie within student learning within the system. Okay, so we were hoping this evening to be standing here giving you our APR, Annual Performance Report data, along with this information. And this would have been a long report had we done that. Last year it was like almost over 2 hours. So the problem with that is that data is still embargoed until Thursday. So it'll be released to the public on Thursday. We will bring the APR data to you November 5th at that board meeting. disaggregated, very similar to what you're going to see this evening. So that kind of has to be put to the side.
Embargoed by DESI.
Yes, embargoed by DESI, and embargoed by the state, by DESI. So tonight, what we can give you is our internal metrics that we assess on kiddos' performance, and what we're talking about is iReady, reading and math for grades 3 through 5, and also 6-8. Course failure rates for grades in the middle school and high school level, and then credit deficiencies in the high school level. So we will give that information to you, disaggregate out by student subgroup, because that information is not APR. That's internal metrics that we have deemed as important to monitor, and we are happy this evening to share that information with you. So it's important, you've seen this slide several times this fall already, but these next two slides are important to provide context to any information that we bring forward to you. So again, this is the district enrollment based on the last student count date that we had back in January 30th of 2019. We're getting ready to have our next one, our most current one, coming up soon. So it's on the left-hand side, broken down by lunch status. Student subgroups are on the right-hand side. And then when you disaggregate that information out by elementary, middle, and high school, again, when we usually talk about this, we talk about lunch status being fairly similar across all grade spans. And then as we've monitored this and kind of studied it, looking at the elementary student subgroups, we think that we're becoming a little bit more diverse at the elementary level, and that's important for us to acknowledge so we can deploy strategy to address that issue. So last board meeting, when we had a team come up and present to you, they were still in this focus area and this goal area. They were presenting that evening all the process measures. So we talked about early childhood, we talked about launch. There are a bunch of metrics, a bunch of data points in this area that we monitor that we call process measures, as we do all focus areas. Tonight, we flip the coin and we start talking about the priority metrics. And if you remember back in 2017-18, district leaders led senior leadership, but we also got feedback from parents, we got feedback from teachers, we got feedback from patrons about what are high value data points that we can include on a scorecard to determine how well a school is performing. And we call those our priority metrics, and they appear on our climate and culture scorecard. And tonight we're going to start going into and navigating the academic success and graduate outcome scorecard. The climate and culture, the majority of those priority metrics I provided to you along with Rhonda and Jean back at the beginning of September. So when we deliver the white paper to you, it'll be coming November 5th when we deliver all this information in unison together. There will be copies of the academic success and graduate outcome scorecard in that white paper. We publish these at the district grade span and school site level. So we get these in the hands of leaders, and hopefully leaders and teachers use the information on these scorecards to drive strategy. The one thing I wanted to point out on this slide was when you look at the climate and culture scorecard, elementary, middle, and high school, they look exactly the same because we're monitoring the same metrics across all of those grade spans with the climate and culture scorecard. These scorecards, when you look at an elementary, doesn't look the same as a middle school, and the middle school doesn't look the same as high school because there's different assessments that kids take depending on what grade span we're talking about. So these cards do look different when we break them out by grade spans. On the academic success and graduate outcomes scorecard, there's a couple important vocab words that we like to talk about. So status is one. So when a leader or a teacher or a patron has a scorecard in front of them, status basically says this is the school's performance on this metric in comparison to other schools within the district. Okay? Trend gives the reader or the leader or the teacher information with how well did they come up on that metric, or did they go in the wrong direction and come down. So those are two important terms that we use when we're looking at scorecards to drive instruction.
And
go ahead.
When you look at trend, how many years are you looking at?
It's the previous year.
Just so it's
year. This is only our second year reporting it this way, so this is year 2. So in the future, we'll have multiple years.
Okay.
and we'll have to determine.
So it's not really a trend yet, it's just.
It's trend out year over year right now.
Right, right.
Because we have a 2-year data set that we've got in the scorecard data.
Okay.
Good point. Okay, so this next slide, this is a 30,000 kind of foot view level of what metrics we're talking about when we talk about those that are on the academic success and graduate outcome scorecard. So the left-hand side are what we consider academic success. So you've got obviously APR assessments, you've got MAP, you've got end-of-course assessments, and then you've got our internal metrics, which we're going to talk about tonight, which is iReady, course failure rates, course credit deficiencies. So that's the left-hand side, the academic success. The right-hand side are the graduate outcomes. So advanced courses, ACT composite, grad rate, graduation follow-up, all of those are APR. That information you'll get on November the 5th. So this does a pretty good job of, I think the slide does a good job of giving a viewer what are we talking about when we're talking about the scorecard. So that being said, we're going to dive right into this. And again, we're going to only focus on strategy 1.2.6 this evening. So I'm going to turn this over to Jay first, and he's going to go through the elementary data first, and then he'll turn it over to Shane. He'll cover middle and high school. You ready to go?
Good evening, and good to see you. And we're going to pull up some elementary academics for you. And Dr. Leonard, to your point, our trend data is just 2 years. At this point, what I'll be sharing is more of that comparison of that 2-year, and so as we get into it. So what you see in front of you is a representation of our iReady end-of-year comparison, comparing our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders from 2018 to 2019 in math first is what we're going to get into. And as you look at, we have 3 through 5 combined, and then we have breakdowns by 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And the percentages that you see on there are the percentages that are of students that are performing on grade level at the end of the year. Okay, so when we look at the very top column, all grades 3 through 5, that means 62% of our 3rd through 5th graders were performing on grade level, and that's a 2% increase over the previous year. So that's the way that you read that information. And so green means we went in the right direction, and red means we went in the wrong direction as far as the comparison, or the direction that we don't want to go into. So you can see that overall, grades 3 through 5, we see lots of greens, specifically grades 3 and 4th grade in most subgroups went in the right direction. And that wasn't the case for 5th graders that are now currently 6th graders in our system. As we look at that, you can see that we have that broken down by all of our subgroups, and it's very important for us to compare our subgroups to see, are we closing that gap, that academic gap that we are so much trying to minimize, and make sure that we are all performing, that all students and of all subgroups are performing at the same level or going in the right direction. And so we have 5 key areas: our free versus full, black versus white, Hispanic versus white students, IEP versus non-IEP, and ELL and non-ELL. And you'll see that consistent as we get through our math and our reading areas.
Jay?
Yes.
Previous slide.
Yes.
This is just more of a question. For the black students, 4th grade, huge increase.
Absolutely.
18% increase, and then all of a sudden we hit a wall.
Yes.
In 5th grade.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Why? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that seems pretty dramatic, 25% increase. Or
Absolutely.
Different change, and I don't know if you've dug into it deep enough, but that just really stands out.
We have these are different cohorts, right, that you're comparing to each other, right? So just understand that we're comparing last year's 4th graders.
Oh, I understand.
This year's 4th graders.
Yeah.
So over time, as we get more data,
It's not the same kids that went down 7%. I understand.
However, I think the point is well taken, is that in 5th grade, we need to look at our curricular and standards. Are we aligning to where the tests are being taken? Are we actually hitting on grade level content, or what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of red in the 5th grade.
5th grade
So,
clearly indicates investigation as compared to 3rd, 4th, 5th. There's a couple spots, but a consistent spot on the 5th grade side, 5th grade level.
given that it's not the same cohort, in some ways, if there had been a dramatic increase the previous year, you would expect, statistically, you would expect to see the decline. So it's not.
And you'll see that in a couple spots, not on this one quite as
Yeah.
much, so it is.
Yeah, correct. And I think that's both the challenge in this and the opportunity in the future to create true trends.
Longitudinal.
Longitudinal to see exactly, is this going to be a fifth grade opportunity in the future and the year after and the year after? That's going to tell us that might be more of a curriculum than a student grade level issue.
These are 2 data points. We don't have trends yet.
Correct.
We just simply
So
compare
this is
2
strictly
data.
comparison between 2 years.
Now, I should know this, Jay, but is iReady homegrown, or do other districts use iReady?
Yes, it's a national, iReady is a national, so we can have some national norms in that sense. It's a purchased.
Yeah, that would be useful to see as well, I think, if in fact they make those normative data available to us, see where we are compared to others on iReady.
Other questions about this specific slide? So coming back to that comparison, obviously with these subgroups, we want to make sure that we are working to ensure that all of our students have those opportunities to perform. And you can see, as you pointed out previously, that we're excited in 4th grade that we closed that gap 14%. However, there is still, as an example, a 13% gap in 4th grade between our black and our white students. So while green is trending in the right place, anytime that we see those large differences in percentages, that's where our work is, and that's where we need to spend our focuses in eliminating those gaps. So that you see that when we look at observations of iReady math, 4th grade had the highest percentage of students at or above grade level, 66%. Our black 4th grade students had the largest percent increase at 18%. And our black 5th grade students, as we noted, had our largest decrease. And so why do we grow so much at one grade level and decrease at the other? Our largest gap closure in student subgroups was between white and black students at 14%. And the largest gap increase was between black and white students at 3rd grade level, 8%. So we're not having consistencies, and that's where the work and the magic's going to come in, is why not? Why don't we have consistency? How can we find those, and what information do we need to look at deeper to gather that information? Questions about the observations about iReady math? Moving to our reading status, our 4th graders did very well that year, and you'll see that that's all green, and it's more mixed at our other grade levels. So we are obviously happy. Our 56%, or we're not happy, 56% of our students of all of our students are at or above grade level. But when you break down by our different subgroups, we can see by grade level and by those subgroups how we are doing. And when we compare all of those to each other, we are also pleased, besides the 4th grade students, that overall our ELL students had a tremendous growth in their status and reading performance level. When we compare our subgroups here to each other, again, it's a mixed bag. We have greens and we have reds everywhere, and there's not necessarily consistency in what is happening with our status and reading. So green means good, and red means we're going in the wrong direction. And this one, we can see that in 3rd grade, black versus white on reading status, it was a 19% increase gap and actually landed at 33%. We closed the gap by 10% in 4th grade to a gap of 18%. So mixed outcomes on this one.
Charles, this is the one that I was speaking to that kind of shows a cohort move, right? That a group, that 4th grade cohort this year showed a spike. Also, that cohort that followed that group didn't have the same performance, so you see a sharp decline in the 3rd grade level. So you can kind of see sometimes when you have cohorts go, one number follow and track the other number, but then over time we'll look for more, trend over multiple years. So the cohort flattens. The other way that the department looks at this, there's 3 different metrics. So next time you'll see status, progress, and growth. We're giving you status tonight. Actually, in the paper, you'll also get some growth metrics. And then next time you'll get status, growth, and progress. And those represent three different things. Status is kind of point in time as compared to proficiency. Progress is cohort over cohort, and growth is a student compared to that student, right? It's student to student growth over time. So there's multiple ways to determine, what's playing out in the system to help direct strategy. So this is status again for tonight, and you'll have growth in the report.
So when we look at the status reading observations, all student subgroups in fourth grade increased their iReady over that 2-year movement. The largest increase was in our ELL students, and we saw an increase in performance in Hispanic third grade and Black fourth grade students. Our largest decrease in students' performance was our third grade students at 18%. And our largest gap closure was between our ELL and non-ELL students. And then our largest increase was between our Black and white students in third grade. So those were some significant findings as we looked through the last 2 slides of those data in comparison that stood out to us. Entertain any questions that you have concerning the elementary data at this time.
I really have a question, just have a comment. So another really key part of this is looking at, I'm thinking of some of these grade levels, looking at the curriculum expectations. So I'm especially thinking about math, grade 5. You might help me with this. So is 5th grade when we bring in some abstract concepts, some beginning geometry? Grade 5.
Actually, geometry now starts, I think, more around 2nd, 3rd grade. But as far as getting it abstract, you're probably correct.
More in 5th grade. So, there's so many pieces to this puzzle.
Absolutely.
And so I'm thinking about some of the expectations in terms of some of they're building. So by the time they get to 4th grade and doing well, but then by the time they get to 5th grade, especially with math, they're building. So if they don't have a really good foundation when they get to that grade, sometimes they hit a wall.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's just, I'm just thinking of some other things that we don't see.
And I'm sure there's many
This
sides,
presentation.
many of those things that we don't see that we want to account for, including that excitement from 5th grade to go on to middle school and, hey, we're done with the elementary, but we can't use that as an excuse. We still
I
want you
know, I know.
to show what you know.
But all those things that's going on in the
Absolutely.
classroom as well, and
Absolutely.
I'm sure our curriculum department's addressing that, looking at it. trying
This
to-
information comes back and says, okay, obviously we're missing some standards, hitting on some standards. Are we missing it in our curriculum, or is it a time crunch thing, or what's the opportunity? And so getting the feedback from the 5th grade teachers to help with this will be part of that dig in to make sure that we address some of those.
We feel confident that iReady is a great predictor or an indicator of where students need to be then to be prepared for math. Are we confident in our use of iReady?
We're confident in it. However, that's always under review each year, especially as the standards for MAP change and what's being tested on to make sure, okay, are what we looking at iReady, is that a significant predictor of MAP? And that review went past, and we still believe that it's a good, it's evidence that it is going in the right direction, but how strong the correlation is, I can't speak to that specific number.
We ran some of that data to check the correlations between that and MAP data. It's pretty tight on reading. It's a little looser on math, is what we've seen. So we feel like it's very accurate on the reading side, it appears, but maybe some math gaps. That's why we got to go back and analyze what this is telling us and what the other assessment's telling us in order to help inform curricular changes or instructional supports for teachers. And kind of next meeting, what you'll see tonight is another kind of data information download for you. The next one, you'll see the APR, but you also see a list of kind of the next steps at the next meeting, which kind of will dive into what we're doing in the area of math in order to try to understand where the gaps exist in the standards, the analysis that we're working through, and the best practices that we can try to replicate. So that will be part of the slide deck on the 5th, for sure.
Yeah, we have an extremely active group of elementary math teachers that meet on a regular basis and tweet their work with each other. I mean, so I know they're working really hard at that.
Yeah, thank you for making.
What is that called? What is that they're doing at our elementary those teachers in the building that are the leaders in math?
So some of them are members of our CDC and leading the elementary math chat.
Yeah, that's it.
Is that what
math
you're talking
chats.
about?
And they're
Yes, the elementary math
fascinating
chats.
what they share with each other.
Yes, they're very passionate about it, and what I will say is that regardless of their involvement or not, our teachers are very passionate about figuring out why do we have these gaps and making sure that, hey, is it a curriculum, is it my teaching, is it my connection with the students? They take it very personal, and to me, that's where we're going to overcome this, is them taking it personally and making sure that they have their students in mind.
I mean, I have always heard, and since I've been involved here, you know, basically the third grade is a real key point of reading. Is that still kind of, I mean, the learn to read and read to learn at that point in third grade, I've always heard that's a pivotal point.
It's a pivotal predictor point.
Okay.
Of
Because
future success, and then you're actually shifting towards.
I mean, I've heard that for years. I was just wondering if that is still kind of the, quote, I don't want to call it standard because that's a really bad term there, but philosophically,
That's still in
is
the
that?
vernacular as a accurate predictor of future success, for sure.
Early literacy, I think, is key because it's sort of this threshold for everything.
Including math.
And that's what we can't go too deep into what we see in the MAP data because it's embargoed right now,
Yeah.
but we will see similar to what we saw last year, which is reading really moving on a strong trajectory in the district and progressing again, and we'll give you hard data points regarding that. But math is here, it wavers, right? It's unpredictable, and I don't think that's inconsistent with the state or others, but it is something that we're continuing to struggle with. While we're continuing to accelerate in reading, the math continues to be the unpredictable content that we're trying to figure out how to get better at.
Thanks for your time, and I'll turn the time over to Dr. Dublin to carry on.
Well, good evening. Glad to be here. Thank you, Jay, for kind of plowing the ground in the first part of this. It's where we're going to shift into middle school academics and kind of take a similar approach at looking at iReady, both in math and reading, and then we'll kind of go into some course failures and then high school academics as well. So the first section here, we will look at iReady for middle school math. And I want to explain all the data. It's the same approach as comparing 2 years, two-year comparison, and status as far as students on or above grade level. So as you can see, middle school math opportunities for improvement. Our sixth grade is about even if you look at green going up, red going down. Eighth grade is certainly the area kind of similar to fifth that we see a lot of opportunities in math for. Overall, sixth through eighth grade, 45% of our kids are on or above grade level in math. I'll come to some data statements here in a moment. Similar gap closure analysis that Jay showed you. This is for, of course, sixth through eighth grade. Sixth grade gap is not closed at 5 levels that we're looking at. Seventh grade, you can see yellow versus non-yellow. Ninth grade gap closure 18%. The same thing. Eighth grade, we do not see closure.
There are a lot more red across the board on both of those two slides. I mean, so we don't have the swing per cohort. That's just straight across.
That's right. Sixth grade is kind of a somewhat brighter spot. You're right. Seventh and eighth grade are the red. Gap closure here kind of flips. Sixth grade is not a bright spot. So some things that we pointed out. ELL students have the largest increase at 13% in their iReady performance. Black students' performance in iReady increased in sixth grade. All three grades, percentages respectively. The largest gap closure was between yellow and non-yellow, as I pointed out. Seventh grade at 18%. And the largest gap increases between black and white students in sixth grade at 14%. So similar to what Dave was talking about, you guys are asking a question. This is our area. Math is the area. You're seeing that, you're showing that. Our teachers and our groups are taking that seriously. And we'll come back next time with the next steps and strategies that we're looking at to focus on this area. It's obviously about math. Okay, so I'll kind of jump into reading. So again, same approach here. Overall, sixth grade, 51% of our kids are on or above grade level in reading. It's taken on 6th and 7th grade, kind of a mixed bag. 8th grade is really a bright spot there, but all of them are really 7 out of the 9 subgroups group. Even at 0%, they all improved as far as year over year. Yeah, comparison, a couple highlights for ELL again, 20% gap closed. Hispanic versus white, 6th grade, not closed, just 17%. Again, some data observations. So the largest increase was for ELL, as I pointed out. The largest decrease is, as I pointed out, Central and Hispanic, 14%. I mentioned 7 out of 9 subgroups. Improved overall in 8th grade. Their overall results improved by 3%. Largest decrease is again ELL 23. Largest increase was between Hispanic and white students in 6th grade at 17%. So, some celebrations, but again, I like to have services showing up and find ways to focus on it. Okay, so let's spend a moment on course failure rates. So one thing I want to point out about this is your 1 year of data. So we did share this last year and had this data, but we looked at it differently and realized that this is a much cleaner approach. Last year, I believe we were including withdrawals and blank up the data a little bit. So we decided to go with 1 year, and I'm going to point out some of the subgroup gaps, but that's why you don't see year over year or annually, et cetera. So this is just last school year, 2019, course failure rates of 1 year.
So this is, so just to clarify, your operationally defining course failure is they enrolled in a class, they stayed in a class, they failed the class, as opposed to they enrolled in a class, they were in the class and they withdrew.
Transferred out.
Okay, so this is strictly you failed the class you stayed in.
This is an earned F. An earned F.
That's right.
Legit F, okay.
Okay.
Creating this as a new baseline number
Yeah.
for us to proceed.
All classes, not core or performance. Is this all classes?
You actually, I believe this is core.
Just core.
I believe so. I can't say 100%.
That's a good point, because I was going to ask if there are departmental
friend
and
in the
disciplinary
crowd.
differences, like science, history, Yeah, if we could disaggregate them that way. Yeah.
Okay.
So just a couple things to point out again. Overall, 6th through 8th grade, 9% of our 6th through 8th graders failed the course. Some of the gaps, 3 to full, 10% gap there. Black students at 14%, white students at 9, 5% gap. ELL versus non-ELL, 1% gap.
9% of combined 6th and 8th graders, which would be, going back to our demographics.
How many kids?
Right, what does 9% represent?
Oh, actually, for middle school, it's about 5,000. Right?
I'm scrolling.
So 9%.
5,822
500 kids.
failed one singular course.
So this is percentage of students or the percentage of classes? Okay, 9% of students failed at least one class. Okay, so these are unduplicated students who have failed.
And they could have failed more than one.
I believe so. I believe it's one more. We're going to, we can clarify the definition.
When I say we need, it's probably good for us to know.
Yes.
What we're talking
Some may have gotten disproportionate credit for their failure.
So some observations that I made about the course failures. The lowest course failures were full and ELL. Full was 4%, ELL 8%. 6th grade Hispanic and ELL, both 6% experienced lower course failure rate in the same subgroups as 7th and 8th grade. So in other words, other than ELL students, course failures upward subgroup 6th to 8th grade. So like we said, as they get older, the course failure rates get worse. Free black students in the high 6th or 8th grade course failure rates over 14% at each of them. So, again, that's similar subgroups that we see opportunities here. Same things happen with course failures.
Just the last
just,
slide on
just a couple contextual questions. Nobody's surprised by me asking context, but so in elementary school, if you fail, you keep going, right? I mean, that's the way it is. In middle school, if you fail a class, you don't keep going. You have to retake the class. Is that
Not necessarily.
No.
in a core class?
No. No.
It's not till you start credit bearing typically.
Until high school.
Right, high school.
It's been so long since my son was in middle school. I keep
It's a rare case, just to be honest, in middle school that we pay or bring back to same level course. And part of that is it shows that doesn't work. It appears that it's not a strategy.
Okay.
It just doesn't happen.
So you don't repeat a failed course until high school. That's interesting. So that's just getting some context and clarification. I knew about high school and elementary, but I wasn't sure about middle school. The second part then is, how do we monitor progressions of midterm grades or whatever, as far as what are the strategies to?
Yeah. Well, so a couple things. We're going to really dig into that next
Okay.
time and talk about that, but I can tell you that they are doing quarter checks, the next big quarter,
Right.
semester checks. So teams and teachers are highly monitoring that, and there's a lot of ways that we can be, intervention time, get parents involved. There's a lot of things that they're going to monitor along the way before it gets to you. Report that.
And I know we're honing in on one particular subgroup of people, of students who are failing, but it also shows, which I don't think is a trend because we've only got 2 years of data, but if you keep failing a core class and failing a core class, then you cannot expect to see the 8th grade scores improved. I mean, because you've got those failures that just keep piling up on you, so.
It's
Not easy work.
And this may
Not
be
easy
jumping
work.
ahead to next meeting when we get the graduation rates and all that data with APR stuff, but the correlation between a failed middle school class, non-credit, and dropout
Uh-huh.
is, I don't know, I'm assuming that there's even more so than high school failing a class.
Uh-huh.
You're failing in middle school, that is not,
A
to
good
me,
trajectory.
a good, exactly. It's not a good sign to be prepared for high school to just give up and drop out. I mean, I don't know, is there data
A lot
on
of
that?
parallel
or is it-
metrics, right, so that we
Yeah.
can cross that show correlation.
Yeah.
Our
I mean, it seems to me
question
that
is
that
what
would be
is
highly
causal,
correlated.
right, in this conversation, because
Yeah.
we can tie chronic absenteeism to the exact same
Oh, absolutely.
path,
Correct.
right, to
Yeah.
failure in middle school,
Exactly.
to failure in high school, and you see chronic absenteeism rates fall into path with some of our gaps, right, some of the same gaps.
Causes failure, which causes dropout,
So it's,
graduation rate.
what's the leading indicator, right? Not
Exactly.
the lagging indicator that we need to be trying to attack. And is it an instructional support? Is it more time? Is it a curricular experience that they're missing? Those are the things that you're trying to diagnose. Is it curricular? Is it pedagogical? Is it, exposure, just enough time? And so all of those things certainly lead to correlations. It's our work to try to figure out what's causal, so you pull the right lever of investment of resource.
Okay, so let me jump into high school academics. You can see a similar chart here, same thing, 1 year data. Overall, 9th through 12th grade, 10%. Some similar gaps that I want to point out in the subgroup, between 3 and 4, 13% gap. A little higher gap between black and white here, 2%. You will notice that it's interesting that will play out as we look at efficiencies as you go from 9th to 12th grade. You'll notice that the numbers are trending downward. Different kids, but it's trending over 4 years. If you look at my 9th graders, double digits, right? 12th graders, mostly single digits. That's good. Less seniors are. And there's some.
Have they dropped out?
No, well, not last year.
Good question.
You'll see that. You'll see that the focus on, because we drastically reduced dropouts, drastically improved graduation rate. You might have noticed it in the past, but this year, it's, I think, because we're focusing on 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
Jane, is there any difference in failure rates depending on modality, say regular seated classes versus online classes?
Launch will tell us that they're pretty similar failure rates.
So
Is
these
this-
would be exclusive or inclusive of online failure rates?
That's a good question.
Inclusive, I believe, it represents all of those courses, right?
It would be good to see, it'd be interesting to see them disaggregated.
And we have that. That'll be part of the launch presentation. We reported that last year and we'll report it again. And they're basically mirrored, right? The seated versus online course failure rates. We haven't seen any drastic differences, so.
But these numbers include them.
They do.
So some data observations that I already kind of mentioned. 12th grade students had the lowest percentage overall at 6%. ELL and full in 12th grade had the lowest percentage. Free students in 9th and 11th had the highest. Each of the three grade levels at 10%. Free and black had the highest at 18 and 17%. The largest subject gap occurs between free and full as I mentioned. Okay, so jump into credit deficiencies. So credit deficiencies here, look at if you're on track to graduate. So
Yeah, can you operationally define credit
I'm
deficiency?
just going to try my best.
Thank you.
So we require 25 credits to graduate. So divided by 4, it's roughly 6.25 credits. So they have to have 6.25 in their freshman year to be on track and to not be seen as credit deficient.
So, meaning they are on track for graduation, right? Otherwise, they're deficient.
So this is a year-over-year comparison from 18 to 19. So if you look at our 9th grade level, just kind of orienting our eyes here. So right, so we improved from 18 to 19. There were 1% less credit deficient kids overall in 9th grade. So overall, at 2019, we're 19%. Before it was 20%. And then going down the line, some similar subject gaps. 32% level, full 8. 10th, 11th grade, you'll see a lot of red, a lot of those credit deficiencies up. If you just think kind of theoretically, so as I'm an 11th grader, I need to have roughly 18.5 or 19 credits to be not credit deficient. So you have to have more credits, right? So you're hitting red if you're not on track. 12th grade, you have to have a mid to 25, but you notice that it's mostly green, except for our that's where last year our huge intensive focus was. So that played out with our focus on 12th graders, getting them to the line, Dr. Jones is not across the line, to the starting line. That's where we saw the most gain. We are also talking as a high school admin team, freshmen, while we saw some improvements, because they were also a huge focus. We're seeing that we don't have so much freshman year. It's harder and harder to capture that track. So they focused a lot on freshman team. So make sure that we keep an eye on it. So our work to do, I think, is in our team.
Do we have the software? I've asked this before, now I can't remember what the answer was, but the software to track all this? I mean, that a parent or a student or anybody instant can know? I mean, we do audits, we do
And
audits.
similar, like you asked about the course failure at the middle school level, they're doing big quarter checks, parent phone calls from PCFs, all sorts of communication with parents and kids.
So do you think these green negatives on this slide is good in 12th grade? So you're saying the work that was put into this past year that we're going to see the celebrations, that's reflected of that? Because you all took laser focus on coaches and graduation coaches and all these different supports to make sure that we move the needle here.
12th grade
Okay,
level.
so this is, yeah. And that, as you all have said, you can't move the needle the last year. And this is just data that shows that, that.
We hope that it plays out, but these 9th graders who are in 10th grade now will not be credit deficient. So if you see the same data a year from now, you should see 9th grade green, 10th grade green, 12th grade green again. Really, we have 11th grade is really our focus. Subgroup gaps here. Point out a couple. So in the 10th grade, ELL versus non-ELL, 11% closure gap. IEP, not closure of 50%.
40%?
Double check that I asked that same question. And we're gonna have to dig in to see why it's a bit of an anomaly, if you will, across the board.
Yeah, but it's the others are.
Yeah, it's not play out as a
And in those individual school scorecards, whatever you're calling them. Dashboard, scorecards, whatever, report card, I don't care what you call it. The course failure, credit deficiency, those are all, I mean, so you can, as a principal, as a teacher, I can see it at my building level, right? Yeah.
By campus, by grade level, by.
Yeah, course failures is middle school, high school has course failures and credit deficiencies.
I remember seeing the template, but I don't see it all the time, so.
And they're highly attuned to that. We
Yeah.
talked about that, they're looking at that, and that to teachers so that they know this is our everybody. So some observations I've definitely, both of them just anecdotally looking at the charts, but I do notice the large increase. PLL students have the greatest decrease, which is great. 12th grade students have the greatest number of facility decreases, as I pointed out. Longest gap closure, the greatest was PLL, non-ELL, gap decrease was Good questions about credit deficiencies. So that wraps up my portion. So in this report, as I think both Dr. Drummond and Dr. Range mentioned, so this report was kind of focused on the data internally and some of our data observations. We'll come back next time on November 5th. We're going to talk about strategic next steps, share the PR, some of these external measures, as well as our graduation rate. It will not be shorter, correct?
Yeah. Hey, I'm glad, I'm glad
All of
Desi,
this was almost in one at one point,
I
right?
was
So
gonna
we've
say,
been able to
I'm
break it into
glad
3 manageable bites for you.
Desi wasn't on point, so this is much more manageable. Thank you, Shane, and thank you,
Yeah, and
Shane.
I don't have questions. It's just, there's been a lot of data presented. We asked for that, and you've gotten it. Observations, and we have added, the district has added numerous programs to address these issues. We've added numerous coaches, mental health things. We have added, I think John's term, if we could pull one lever and solve these problems, it would have been pulled. That lever would have been pulled. We have, I don't know, if somebody take the time to list the programs in the past 3, 4, 5 years, the number of individuals we've added to schools to help address these issues, it is somewhat overwhelming because people would like one lever to change these numbers. If we just did this, it would all just go away and everything would be green on every chart. I think it's just going to take the next steps, I think, are going to again be crucial to make sure programs, people we've added are not, because I get data, I realize they're data points and they're not trends yet, but if we keep waiting for trends, we are going to have a harder time addressing the red, because we know, Jerry just mentioned, look at the 10th grade red. That's no different than 30 years ago. Kids are 16, 17 thinking about dropping out of school, although we focus, really focus on that you can't get a good job. It's still the same kind of thing, and we get to 6th, 7th, 8th grade and middle school, and then you've got the all of a sudden adjustment to 6th grade, and then the 8th grade, they're just, I don't know. I don't even know how you come up with how we're going to address some of those issues. But I think if we're going to, can we, as we look at programs and people we've added, and we look at what our next steps can be, are we just going to continue to add additional money and resources because we haven't?
because they haven't worked? Or can we look at things and say, if we didn't have, and this is, I know this is wrong, but just launch, which has been a huge success. So if we didn't have launch and spending money there, could we put that money someplace else? Now that's bad, because I know that's not true, but just to use any program, Explore, anything you want to use, we've spent money there. Do we continue to spend that money there and add more because we haven't addressed these needs? Or do we see that it's really not making a difference, so we take some of that money and do different things because we haven't made that change? Do we have to wait for trends? Or can we start doing something? Can we just say, yeah, everything we've done is affecting some students in a positive way, so we just keep everything we're doing and we add more? Because that's really what it's going to take. If we keep doing the same thing we're doing now, those numbers aren't going to change. We're doing the same thing that we've done, so we've either got to add more or we've got to change some things we've done. And I'm worried that if we take away from one spot and add another, I don't know the right answer, so I'm not giving an answer. I hate to keep raising more questions, because to me, that's what that data did, just raised tons of questions. But I think that's going to be crucial as we say next steps to address the deficits. Are we going to where's that money going to come from? Or are we completely going to have to change the way we're doing something because kids aren't getting it? I think the next steps are going to be very crucial, and to get the APR in there, but this is not data to me to tell me we've got some issues we need to address, and how are we going to do it? What are we going to do? And I think that's going to be, if it was easy, we would have already pulled lever. We would.
And the hard part is, as we've talked about, when you program up, right, we don't do this by experimental design, right, in education, right, where we have a test group and a regular group to really determine, and even when we do that, controlling all the variables of the lives of every one of those scenarios to get a predictable which is the right outcome is very hard for us to use. So we try to evaluate every one of those programs that we deploy to have impact, and part of Goal 3 report will have some Explore, what's that doing? We presented that last year, a little bit on Encore, comparison of failure rates and those things. So always trying to evaluate those, but you're right, what is the right additional lever, or do you reallocate resources is always a question, because they are limited. Right now, we're trying to invest in early childhood as probably the biggest lever right now, trying to get to students earlier. I think at secondary level that we would say that one of the things that we have to evaluate is transition years, right? And the data tells us that over and over again, that the 6th grade transition and the 8th grade transition are predictors of a middle school success, and thus predictors of high school success. We've invested on the backside with graduation mentors, but what do we need to do on the front side of some of those environments also? We've done a little bit at the freshman academy level around supports for those freshmen at a few sites, but we're not sure if that's something you need to expand, or if you need to think differently about real transition for 6th grade. That's where we're getting direct feedback from educators, our teachers, and our principals regarding what's working, and also break this data down that's district level by site to determine what you always say, Bruce, is where is it's happening the best, right? And are there classrooms where we can learn? Kind of like what we talked about, math teachers. Are there places in our district where we see 3 years of gain year over year? There's those 20 classrooms of best practice. Are we studying those 20 classrooms to see what needs to be scaled out into the rest environment? And that's exactly the data that our system starts with, this overarching, identify the problems, and then dive deep into the analysis as far as we possibly can to lead us to better investments. So it's good. Great questions.
I think it's one of the things that's really encouraging here is that we do have data, even if the data are, I mean, to put it kindly, some of the data are at best sobering. And my sense is, at least in the world we live in, not the best of all possible worlds, we will not have infinite resources. So we have to be able to make judgments about the best ways to invest that. Now, the 7 of us are not the best suited to determine sort of all pedagogical strategies, et cetera. The 7 of us are, happily or otherwise, in a position to make judgments about, to a degree, where resources are going, right, based on the recommendation of administration and our colleagues in the classroom. So it's good. I think we're not going to have the luxury of just more. We're going to do more of stuff. That's not going to be an option in all cases. So it may be we're going to have to do some things differently. It may be that we're going to have to stop doing some things that we're doing and start doing some other things. I don't know what those answers are. But
You'll see a little more understanding next time as you get to the APR, see more specificity on the growth and progress numbers of where we see highlights and where we can learn from what we did in one place to try to replicate in the other area is really what some of the next steps will be. So.
I don't think we'll have more just in terms of money. We're not always going to have more money, and I'm not really sure that we can simply ask more of teachers in the classroom. They can't simply pile up. They've got to add up to something. And I think those are the decisions that we'll be making as we go forward.
Anything else? Let's then go to the next item, 14.01, administrative reports. John?
On over to the team. Carol, we'll just work our way this way.
Sure. I do have an update for you. You asked the question earlier regarding the bids on demolition work, and there's approximately a 16% gap. So the next bid was 16% higher. We're a little more. Wow. Otherwise, I'll tell you that our report with that first division analysis and DCD, we did approve the contract to be negotiated or further executed with Transpart. And already today, we had a planning meeting with a team of leaders to start working on the data that we need to be added for that. So again, the timeline call with that information will be forthcoming to the administration by November 29, and then we will be providing you with an update right back. All right, so I just have a couple. So with the historical marker event, we're also partnering with the organization that did that with us. We would essay market, open to all our high school students doing SPS. So 19th grade students in SPS will participate in the essay contest and write as multiple up to $5,000.
The deadline for that will be November 1st. And then just students have had some great opportunities to engage with some initiatives coming out of our office, so some field trips. So our Latinx students, the Latino Hispanic students, were able to go to the Steps to Empowerment Conference held at Missouri State on September 13th. And for those of you who are not familiar with that initiative, it's a great way for our students to engage in college access support resources, partner with Missouri State. So a great way to engage with facilitators, whether they're staff or faculty from Missouri State or maybe some community partners. And just to get them more aware about college resources, whether that's to stay here in Springfield at Missouri State, OTC, Evangel, or Drury, or to go on to other things. And then also they were able to go to the historical marker event hosted by the city. And then they also went to Drury today to listen to Chris Singleton, who spoke of love and forgiveness. And he talked about kind of, his mother was actually one of the victims during the tragic church shooting in Charleston. So, but his message was about love and forgiveness and, the importance of that. So our students got to participate in that. And they'll be also attending the Youth Empowerment Summit, which is a collaboration we work with the NAACP chapter here in Springfield, similar to Steps to Empowerment, focuses on our Black students and college access. And again, kind of similar partnership with Missouri State. And now that I've had some time in this position, I'm doing more of my listening and learning tours. So now I'm working with the middle schools and high schools and scheduling those visits. So it looks like I'll be getting tours and meeting with leadership there.
So I have two quick updates for you tonight. I wanted to share that we have just completed the processing of 1,473 extra duty assignments. Those are curricular, co-curricular, athletic. And I'm sharing that just to highlight the commitment of our staff, both our certificated and our non-certificated staff, meeting the needs of our kids inside and outside the classroom. That 1,473 is just a small sampling of the extra time and commitment that our employees make to support our students. And so just a thank you to them, and I wanted to highlight that with you this evening. And secondly, I wanted to let you know that our benefits open enrollment is just around the corner, that the team is working hard to get information out about that, and they've met with our retired 3 occasions thus far to share information about our upcoming enrollment, which begins October 25th. It will run for 3 weeks, and will include our health benefits, vision, dental, all those various benefits. But we're working hard to make sure that not only our employees but our retirees are well aware of those benefits and advantage of those.
Just had 3 quick updates. First of all, last week, I know many of you are aware, the Community Focus Report was issued, which highlights our blue ribbons and red flags within the community, and it also divides different themes, and education is a big part of the report. So as part of it, you'll see different community perspectives. One of those is from Dr. Frederick. We also have a perspective from C. Riley, our Director of Early Childhood. So some great information about the educational efforts of our community. Wanted to provide an update on engagement opportunities as part of Focus Area 4. Dr. Dublin and Dr. Wynn, as well as Dr. Anderson and Ethan, led the first of a newly revamped engagement process within our system this week. We have 4 different advisory councils that are meeting, and that include teachers and parents and students and others in the community. And those are divided up from the pre-K to grade 2 level, grades 3 to 5, 6 to 8, and then 9 through 12. We, I think, had amazing feedback from the first gathering of those advisory councils, so more great information to come. And then finally, I'll just remind everyone again about the Hall of Fame. We have the reception tomorrow evening and the luncheon on Thursday, and we look forward to celebrating those inductees.
Wrapped up first quarter last week. Major conferences are right around the corner, and that's all for me. And nothing new legislative. It's all about platform adoption right now and preparing for session. We'll start to invite our legislators in as soon as we have platform ready, and do school visits, and we're scheduling the reception for December.
Let's roll into board comments then. Are there any comments from the board? No one wishes to comment? All right. Let me remind you of some upcoming meetings. They start with those this week, the 16th and the 17th. In other words, Thursday is the Hall of Fame events, the reception tomorrow evening at 5:30, and then the luncheon at noon. Our next meeting of the board will be a study session on November 5th. And then there's refresher training that all 7 of us have for. That will be November 14th from 6 to 9 in these meeting rooms right here. And by the way, because our organization is hosting, we do not have to pay tuition. So our tuition is being waived for all 7 of us, which is great. Our thanks to MSBA, the provider of the course. And then finally, our next month's meeting will be on the 19th of November. Stay tuned. I see that my colleague to my left has been writing plus deltas. I went to anybody else who wants to offer some comment on the meeting tonight. Alina and I, when we meet to plan meetings, we always go through those, and so would love to hear what went well and what are the opportunities for improvement. So I have executive session, and that we have to do several things, and so the business of the executive session is in the recommended action, and the recommended action is that the board meet in executive session to discuss legal, real estate personnel matters as provided in section 610.021, subparagraphs 1, 2, 3, and 13 of the revised statute of Missouri. Is there anyone who wants to make a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Thank you, Alina. Is there a second?
Second.
Charles? Are we ready to vote? Please vote.
For the record, the Cardinals are already down 2-0.
Big
and they
shock.
struck
They
out
don't
the
plan to
side in the
score.
first inning.
And